It being equally divided, the vice president votes in the affirmative, and the nomination is confirmed.
There we go. Yeas have it, 51, nays 50. Again, you saw a few Republicans there that may have gone in the nay category. We understand Mitch McConnell is one of those that has voted nay with the Democrats. If we've got Vaughn, what we're seeing right now, let's just set logistics here. It looks like he has been confirmed, or at least has all the votes to be confirmed. When does the swearing in process take place?
Right. We'll look at the swearing in process to happen very soon. Of course, to get the Secretary of Defense in that position at the Pentagon is going to be key. And we're just doing this just 5 days after the inauguration of Donald Trump here. And J.D. Vance coming in, this is his first tie-breaking vote, is vice president, is technically the Senate of the president of the Senate. And so it was 50-50 vote after 3 Republicans, Lisa Murkowski of Alaska, Susan Collins of Maine, and Mitch McConnell of Kentucky each voted against Hegseth's nomination. The question was whether there would be another Republican senator who would vote against Hegseth and essentially force the hand of President Trump to select somebody else. I want to read just, if I could, real fast, a part of this statement that we got during this vote here, Gotti, from Senator McConnell here, who acknowledged that he was about to pass, but voted no anyways. And he said, Mr. Hegseth has failed as yet to demonstrate that he will pass this test. But as he assumes office, the consequences of failure are as high as they have ever been. In his testimony before the committee, Mr. Hegseth provided no substantial observations on how to defend Taiwan or the Philippines against a Chinese attack, or even whether he believes the U.S. should do so. Absent, too, was any substantive discussion of countering our adversaries' alignment with deeper alliance relationships and more extensive defense industrial cooperation of our own. Mitch McConnell voting no, but ultimately Joni Ernst, Tom Tillis, other Republicans who had been openly questioning and skeptical of the rather surprise pick of making Pete Hegseth the nominee after having no leadership experience at the Pentagon over the course of the last 2 months. A lot of damning stories and allegations coming out against him, which he denied. But ultimately, Donald Trump standing behind his nomination, and here tonight by a razor-thin margin with the help of his new vice president, ultimately getting him confirmed.
That is a fascinating statement. And again, you read into this much deeper than I do. But it sounds like McConnell is saying, and McConnell knows about counting votes. So it sounds like he's saying he knew this was going to fail, and this was strictly symbolic. So what message does that send to President Trump there?
It sends a message, number one, ahead of his other confirmation proceedings, that Mitch McConnell is not going to be a guaranteed yes vote, but also that there are more institutionalist skeptics of Pete Hegseth's rise in the ranks to be the chief at the Pentagon. That the potential conflicts, not to mention the ones that the United States currently finds itself involved in through negotiations, but also personnel and military financial aid support, is the fact that Hegseth is going to have a situation where there is questions about not only the appropriations that go to the military through in the month ahead, the budget conversations that take place up on Capitol Hill, but also the U.S.'s military commitment, as Courtney was suggesting, to ultimately the use of military potentially and a greater use of it at the southern border, and what Donald Trump exactly has planned in terms of ways in which the military has uncustomarily been used in the modern era by a sitting president of the United States. Those are a lot of outstanding questions that, as Courtney said, he didn't provide specific answers to during the course of his confirmation proceedings. But despite those lack of answers and clarity on exactly his positions or views of the U.S.'s role militarily overseas and even domestically, he has enough Republican support here after Republicans gained the majority here in this last November's election.
And we've also got Julie Sirkin on the line here. So, Julia, if I can bring you in, I guess one question that I have, not to simplify all of this, but when we're talking about President Trump, he is a masterful simplifier of all things. And so when you see the vote that just happened, was this a loyalty test? I mean, could you see it as a loyalty test to see how the Senate's going to go?
Absolutely. And I would just point out to all of the members that have left over the last few years, some of the more moderate Republican members that have left and are no longer in this chamber. And you find members that are up for re-election in 2026, including Tom Tillis, including McConnell, Susan Collins, John Cornyn, Senator Young. I mean, all these folks who voted, except for Susan Collins, to confirm Pete Hegseth tonight. It is telling that the political calculations were certainly they had a huge role to play in this. I got to tell you, though, McConnell's statement that just came out a couple of moments ago is really notable to me in instructing how we should view him over the next 2 years. This is somebody who served as the longest serving Republican leader in the Senate. We know he's had many tough moments and tough conversations, both publicly and privately, with the man who is currently occupying the White House across Pennsylvania Avenue. But certainly this was a loyalty test. And I'll tell you, in McConnell's statement, he calls out Hegseth, saying that the restoration of a warrior culture will not come from trading one set of culture warriors for another. He says that the precious trust of men and women in the military endures only as long as lawful civilian leadership upholds what must be a firewall between service members and politics. He says the Biden administration failed at this, but he doesn't think Hegseth would do a good job at this either. And remember, McConnell is going to be the chair of the Defense Subcommittee on the Appropriations Committee. Let me put that into normal language. This is the committee that controls the pocketbooks of the U.S. government. This is the committee that controls how the U.S. government spends its money. And McConnell is going to be overseeing the Pentagon's budget. And that's going to be huge for Pete Hegseth. He's going to come before the committee. He's going to ask for more money. McConnell's really going to hold the keys on that. And that's why I think his vote tonight is so important, Gotti.
That is quite a gut check on the landscape as we go forward there. Now, we've got Murkowski, Collins, and McConnell. Is this just a universe bringing them together for this vote, or could we see the three of them possibly create like a mini, insurgency block within the Republican Party as we see it in the Senate?
I kind of think that's a little bit of wishful thinking, only because I think Murkowski and Collins were kind of in one column when it comes to their no vote. McConnell was really in another. This is a guy who really prides himself on his foreign policy views, on holding that sort of Reagan-era foreign policy-esque position that Ronald Reagan had, right? Helping our allies, funding Ukraine, helping our allies in the Mideast and all around the world, and really being the voice to push back against Trump. Now Pete Hegseth as well at the Pentagon. Should they do anything to leave our allies behind? McConnell certainly was frustrated by that vote to provide funding for Ukraine aid that we saw lag out over several months last year at the behest of the former President Trump, now, of course, President Trump, but at that point, he was former President Trump. And I think this is really going to be where his role takes shape over the next 2 years. I know that was important for him. A couple of weeks ago, he actually wrote an opinion piece about Trump's Pentagon picks, even before Pete Hegseth. So I think he was really concerned with the national security element of this, right? How Pete Hegseth is going to approach the men and women in combat, what his views are on war crimes and the Geneva Accords. I think Murkowski and Collins, they're very concerned by that. But I think they were also moved by those allegations, the affidavit of which we first reported here earlier this week, the heavy drinking, his comments about women. I think that definitely influenced them. McConnell certainly as well, in terms of the character and temperament that a Secretary of Defense should have. By the way, J.D. Vance breaking this tie tonight on a Secretary of Defense nominee. I don't want to call it unprecedented, but I don't remember the last time that has happened. And in fact, a tie-breaking vote the last time that happened was Betsy DeVos for Education Secretary in 2017 when Mike Pence broke that tie. And certainly tonight, you have the most bipartisan pushback to a defense secretary nominee in a very, very long time.
And Julie, we're running out of time here as we hit the clock. But last question. I mean, this is a massive win for President Trump tonight. What kind of momentum does this give him going into the rest of his confirmations?
Well, I think Tulsi Gabbard has always been in the column that could be riskier even than Pete Hegseth. I think all of this opposition to Pete Hegseth kind of evolved over the last few weeks as we've been reporting this. It seems, of course, the pressure was on from Republicans. You know Trump, he doesn't want to back down. When these allegations came to light concerning Pete Hegseth, certainly that concerned many in Trump world. But I think Trump wanted him to continue fighting. He knew Pete Hegseth for a long time, obviously since before Fox News. I mean, he really knew this guy for quite some time. He likes the personality persona he brings on Fox. He thinks he's going to be a guy who's going to take up the TV screens and sort of make his message known when it comes to the reforms he's trying to make at the Pentagon, the woke policies, everything you heard him talk about during his confirmation hearing. And I will tell you, Pete Hegseth was in the gallery watching the vote happen with his 7 children. I haven't seen that happen in a long time either.
Yeah, it's been a long time since we've seen any of this happen. And for much of what we saw today, it's never happened before. Unprecedented times, definitely all around. Julie Sirkin, thank you so very much for joining us. I know you stayed up late. Vaughn Hilliard, you also have been so